Welcome to the City of Boulder ballot issue overview presented by the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. I'm Stacy Johnson, volunteer member and voter service director for the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. Judy Mars-Dixon, our ballot issues coordinator for the Boulder League, and team member Ulla Mertz will be presenting the City of Boulder measures. Helping us with Spanish language interpretation is Maria Licia Fuller Martinez and Valentina Sarmiento Cruz. For those in the audience not familiar with the League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights, and we also work to ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. Although we are nonpartisan, we work to empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and through litigation. From now until about 3:30, we will cover the City of Boulder ballot measures. Following this presentation, we will cover the state issues, followed by ballot measures for the City of Lafayette and the Town of Superior. Today's forum does not include any outside speakers who are in favor or opposed to any of the ballot measures. The presenters will take a few minutes to explain each ballot measure, and then they will address questions submitted by you through the Q&A function of this Zoom session. To get us started, here is Judy Mars-Dixon, who will cover ballot question 2C for Boulder voters.
Thank you, Stacy, and welcome everyone. So this first question 2C is referred to the voters by City Council, and it's about council pay. So it amends Section 7 of the Charter, proposing to change council pay from a stipend per meeting to an amount based on the area median income, AMI. This would take effect, if passed, on the date of the swearing in of council in December of 2026. So what currently exists is that council is paid $244 per meeting for 52 meetings for an amount that's about $12,695.28, it says here, for 2024. So if this ballot measure passes, then it would change beginning in 2027 to the area median income, and the mayor would get 50% of AMI in 2024 dollars, because we can't know what 2027 would be. In 2024, it would be $51,100, and the mayor pro tem and other members of council would receive 40% of AMI, and in 2024 dollars, that's $40,880. This measure is proposed, intended to reflect the increased quantity and complexity of council work. So those in favor say that the mayor of Fort Collins receives 75% of the AMI, and 50% for mayor is reasonable. Those in favor also say that increasing council compensation encourages, quote, working class, unquote, people to run for office. And if they are elected, then public policy would more reflect the electorate. Those opposed say that this proposal is inconsistent with the city's goal of reducing expenses. So that's the first question on council pay. Any questions about it before we move to executive sessions?
I don't see any.
All right. So Ulla Mertz is next with the next two issues for the city voters.
Good afternoon. I'm Ulla Mertz, and I'm talking about executive sessions. The ballot measure was proposed by Boulder City Council as part of an effort to improve city governance. If this passes, it will be effective January 1st, 2025. It allows all business meetings, which are regular city council meetings and committee meetings, to meet in private if 2/3 of the council members request it. This would be in Boulder, 6 council members out of a total of 9. Also, what's part of this proposal is that executive sessions have to be held during regular business sessions, and as such have to be announced in the city council session agenda. So if you're familiar with the Sunshine Law in Colorado, which requires for meetings of 3 or more people to be held in public. So this means if council members meet one-on-one, or this means 2 people, they still can be held in private, which is also the practice today. There are restrictions of what topics are eligible for executive sessions, and there are a total of 9, which match the state regulations. So just to mention, I haven't mentioned it before, that state law allows executive sessions as Boulder City is home rule. They have so far elected not to follow the state. So the 9 topics are real estate negotiations, conferences with an attorney on specific questions, confidential matters under federal or state law, security arrangements, negotiation strategy, confidential personal matters, documents protected by the Colorado Open Records Act, which is the Sunshine Law, personnel contracts, and any other discussions allowed by the Colorado Sunshine Law. Also, in a reminder, City Council could operate with executive sessions back when municipalization was discussed, and it was allowed in those days. And finally, those in favor say executive sessions improve the efficiency of council meetings and protect confidential information. Executive sessions are clearly defined by and allowed under Colorado state law, which also allows these 9 specific subjects and topic areas. And the amendment provides safeguards against abuse, and the public will be alerted to the topic of discussion as it's required to be announced in the agenda. Those opposed say executive sessions could be used to prevent transparency of important discussions. Boulder's long tradition of open business has served the city well. Are there any questions on this ballot measure?
Yes. Are the proposed topics of Boulder City executive sessions not the same as those topics allowed via state law?
According to my understanding, they are the same.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. That's all the question so far.
All right, so should we move on to boards and commissions? Are we? Yes. All right. So ballot measure 2E, boards and commission changes. This particular ballot measure is also proposed by City Council and as part of an effort to improve city governance. Currently, the operating procedures which define the eligibility for new and existing boards and the terms are, I call it, baked into the city charter. So if there are any changes need to be made for any other boards, it would require another ballot measure. So what this amendment proposes that it can be, boards can be regulated based on ordinances and do not require approval of voters. What's also part of this ballot measure is that City Council can remove boards or commission members, and they have again specified particular conditions: non-attendance to duties, conduct unbecoming a member, and any other reason not prohibited by law. Currently, the city charter says what is it? They can be removed for cause, which is not very specific. So what this ballot measure does, it makes the reasons for removal more specific. The ballot measure also states how vacancies are filled if the terms have not expired. So City Council will appoint new members in these situations. As currently is allowed, boards and commissions shall choose their officers. It does not specify what kind of officers are required versus the current charter does. And the council may change the powers and duties of procedures of boards and commissions, and they can also abolish boards. This is, as I understand, helpful if there are redundant boards or the purpose of the board is not needed anymore. There are 4 boards that are specified in the charter and are not impacted by this ballot measure. And these are Arts Commission, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Open Space Board, and Planning Board. So now let me go to what people say who are in favor. Currently, City Council can create citizen advisory boards, but cannot determine the terms and eligibility of members, nor the number of members, without having the city charter modified. What I understand is that there have not been an abundance of applications to be these boards. And for example, the current requirement of a 5-year term is a deterrent. So there haven't been enough applicants. City Council needs to be able to abolish boards that are no longer needed. City Council needs additional authority to remove members of commissions as stated in the proposal. People who are opposed say the proposed conditions for removing a member of a commission are too far-reaching. The current City Council authority to remove members of commissions is sufficient. Are there any questions on ballot measure 2E?
There aren't any questions. There's a second slide which might help people.
Oh, right. Oh, we haven't moved on to the next slide.
I mean, you said all those things, but it might help people to see it.
Yeah, that's right.
The 4 boards and all that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there aren't any questions in the Q&A.
All right. So then I pass it back to Stacy Johnson.
To wrap up this presentation, I would like to thank Judy and Ula for their work in supporting voters and their preparations for today's portion of this forum. A huge thank you also goes out to our 2024 Platinum level election sponsors, Premium Members Credit Union, and Wana Brands. Please note a video of this presentation will be available at the League of Women Voters of Boulder County website, lwvbc.org, and at vote411.org, which is the League's complete online voters guide. Vote411.org gives you, besides ballot issue analysis, information about local, state, and national candidates and their responses to questions curated by the League. We encourage the public to visit lwvbc.org for more information on all other upcoming events. And finally, I would like to thank you, the viewer of this portion of the presentation. As a League member, I'd like to stress the importance that elections are our chance to stand up for what matters most to us and to have an impact on the issues that affect us, especially issues impacting our communities, our families, our loved ones, and our future. The League of Women Voters believes in empowering you, the voter, with straightforward information so your voice will be heard. Thank you for attending this portion of the presentation and being an informed voter. In just a few minutes, we will move on to the presentation for the state issues, followed by the city of Lafayette and the town of Superior. We're going to do a quick transition at this time, so bear with us. Before we begin our next presentation, I would like to invite the interpreters from the Community Language Cooperative to provide instructions as to how our Spanish-speaking community members can access the interpretation for this forum.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Hola a todos, a todas y a todos. My name is Valentina and I'm here with my colleague Maria Elisa. We're both here on behalf of Community Language Cooperative and we are here to provide and guarantee our commitment to language justice. Language justice is a type of simultaneous interpretation that seeks to create spaces in which no one language is dominant, spaces in which everyone can participate in the language of their heart. So to achieve this objective, we will be using Zoom's interpretation feature. And what you will see in a couple of minutes is a new little button that looks like a globe on the bar of your screen. On that same bar where you currently have a microphone for the video, for the chat, etc. It'll be towards your right hand. Once you see this new little button come up, go ahead and click on it and select either English or Spanish as both the language that you will be listening into and speaking into. If you are joining the meeting on a phone or on a tablet, you will find the same options for interpretation by clicking on the button with the three little dots on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Hola nuevamente, mi nombre es Valentina y estoy aquí con mi colega María Elisa. Estamos aquí ambas por parte de Community Language Cooperative y estamos aquí para ofrecerles y garantizar su compromiso con la justicia del lenguaje. La justicia del lenguaje es un tipo de interpretación simultánea que busca crear espacios en los que no dominen ningún idioma, espacios en los que todos puedan participar en el idioma de su corazón. Para lograr este objetivo vamos a utilizar la función de interpretación de Zoom. Entonces lo que verán en un par de minutitos es que aparecerá un nuevo botón que parece un globo terráqueo en la barra inferior de su pantalla, en la misma barra donde ahorita tienen los botones para el micrófono, para el video, para el chat, etc. Una vez que vean este nuevo botoncito aparecer, hagan clic en él y seleccionen inglés o español como el idioma en el que desean escuchar y participar. Si ustedes están en esta sesión por medio de una tableta o de un teléfono, encontrarán las mismas opciones para la interpretación haciendo clic en el botón que tiene tres puntitos en la esquina inferior derecha de su pantalla. For those of you use this meeting and that are we want to let you know that Spanish is 20 to 25% longer than English, so please be aware of your speed. If you have any questions or any issues whatsoever with this technology, please let the whole group know by means of the chat box so that we can work together to address those issues. Un breve recordatorio es que la interpretación es simultánea, entonces si participa, mantenga un ritmo de conversación. Si tiene alguna pregunta o algún problema con esta tecnología, por favor comuníquese al grupo completo a través del chat. Muchas gracias por tenernos por acá. Podemos activar los canales de interpretación ahora. Thank you so much for having us here. We can go ahead and start the interpretation channels now.
Bear with me a second. Welcome to the ballot issue overview presented by the League of Women Voters Boulder County. I'm Stacy Johnson, volunteer member and voter service director for the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. This presentation will include state issues, the city of Lafayette, and the town of Superior. The panel consists of Judy Mars-Dixon, our ballot issues coordinator for the Boulder League, and team members Peggy Leach, co-president of LWBBC, Deborah Hayes, and Sharon Gable. Helping us with Spanish language interpretation is Maria Alicia Fuller Martinez and Valentina Sarmiento Cruz. For those in the audience not familiar with the League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights, and we also work to ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. Although we are nonpartisan, we work to empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and through litigation at the local, state, and national levels. This presentation will cover state issues from now till about 4:15. Next, we will cover ballot measures for the city of Lafayette, followed by the town of Superior. Today's forum does not include any outside speakers who are in favor or opposed to any of the ballot measures. The presenters will take a few minutes to explain each ballot measure, and then they will address questions submitted by you through the Q&A function of this Zoom session. To get us started, here is Judy Mars-Dixon.
Welcome. And we are in for some real conversation this afternoon because we have 14 state issues and then one RTD issue to cover before we cover the 3 city of Lafayette and the town of Superior. So here we go. So the 7 of the 14 state issues are referred to the voters by the Colorado legislature, and 7 are referred by citizens. That is, they are citizen initiatives. And then, of course, RTDs is referred by the RTD Board of Directors. Amendments are proposed changes to the Colorado Constitution. And propositions, and there are 7 amendments, and then the 7 propositions are changes to state statutes. So regarding the 7 propositions, 5 of those they are numbered. They change state statute. 2 of those, followed by letters, they change the tax code if they are passed. So we're going to start with the amendments first. And the first one is Amendment G, which is modifying property tax exemption for veterans with disabilities. So this is referred by the state legislature, and it will take 55% of the voters to pass it. What this does is it proposes to reduce property taxes for veterans with significant service-related disabilities. Now, currently, veterans with a service-related disability that are 100% disabled are already eligible for this. This expands that to veterans with a significant disability, so it doesn't have to be 100%. What this does is it would offer this tax exemption to about 3,700 more vets. The tax exemption means that the way it's calculated is that the first 200,000 of a home's value would be reduced by 50%. All right. So the homestead exemption for everyone who is currently eligible, and this includes seniors, is maintained. There's no change here. So those in favor say that this provides tax relief for disabled vets who are unable to work. And those opposed say that property taxes will be harder to administer given that it is the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs that determines level of disability. All right, so that is Amendment G. Questions about that one?
We don't seem to have any yet.
All right, so now we're going to go to Amendment H with Peggy, one of our fearless leaders.
All right, thanks, Judy. Yes, Amendment H is about judicial discipline procedures and confidentiality. And it's resulting from allegations in 2021 about judicial misconduct. So there was a lot of dismissing of charges and lack of transparency and all those kinds of things. Currently, the Supreme Court can dismiss a case or hide decisions from public view. So this removes the state Supreme Court from the disciplinary decision-making process. And a new system will be set up which will include a new body to judge these allegations. So that's 4 citizens, 4 district court judges, and 4 attorneys would now address these. So a pro is that Colorado judges should not have direct influence and oversight over discipline of their colleagues. And a con is that the Constitution states that all defendants have a right to, oops, I'm on the wrong one. The current system works. Judges understand how to review cases, hold hearings, and make impartial decisions. I've got somebody knocking at my door. Okay. Any questions on that one?
There's nothing in the Q&A.
Okay. So we'll move to Amendment I, which is constitutional bail exception for first-degree murder. This was overwhelmingly supported by the Colorado House and Senate. And it starts because Colorado repealed the death penalty in 2020. And the Constitution states that all defendants have a right to post bond with the exception of capital offenses. And capital offenses were defined as those that could be punished by death. So basically what's happened since the death penalty was abolished was that judges were having to offer bond for everybody, including first-degree murder. They didn't have any discretion. So a pro on this one is that it restores a long-standing legal precedent that was inadvertently eliminated with the repeal of the death penalty. And a con is that persons are considered innocent until proven guilty, and judges should have the discretion on bail decisions. Are there any questions on that one?
There's a question on H, the new
Okay.
judicial panel. What if there is a tie? There is an even number of members on the board. Good question.
And you know, I need to read that a little more thoroughly, but I almost have the impression that for each case, they will pick one citizen, one district court judge, and one attorney from this panel. So then that would be basically a 3-person panel for each case. But I hate to say it, I'm not completely sure about that. So that's the best I can do for now. Any more questions?
No more questions.
All right, we'll
All right.
pass it on to Judy.
Okay. So now we're to Amendment J. What this is proposing is that there be a repealing of the definition of marriage in the Constitution. So on this one, if the voter votes yes, it means that the definition of marriage, which is now in the Constitution, a union between one man and one woman, will be removed. If you vote no on this one, then that definition, and currently in the Constitution, will remain. So given that it's a repeal question, it doesn't require 55% of the vote. It only requires a majority vote. All right. So a little history on this one. In 2014 and 2015, the state recognized same-sex marriage. It was recognized in Colorado. More recently, in 2022, Congress lifted the ban on same-sex marriage. So pros, those in favor, and it's an organization, and there might be others by now, Freedom to Marry, is wanting this repeal of the language so that any future decisions by state Supreme Court that might attempt to change the current recognition of same-sex marriage could not occur. Those opposed, the argument there is that marriage should stay between one man and one woman, and a future court could rule that way. All right, so that's Amendment J. Question?
There's one question. Will there be language added to describe what is a valid union or what is recognized as marriage if the current language is repealed? I think that's covered by federal law now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And so I think that given that that is the case, now I don't want to say 100% sure. I think the answer is that no additional language is proposed.
Yeah.
All right, shall we go on to K? This one is about modifying constitutional election deadlines. This is pretty straightforward. It's referred by the state legislature. It requires a 55% in order to pass. So there are 3 modifications. And so a yes vote will move all 3 of them. The first one is citizen signatures for a citizen initiative for a ballot measure. The due date for those signatures would be moved up by 1 week. It's now 3 months from election date, so it's going to be 3 months and 1 week. Judges who wish to be retained, they would have to file their intention, if you will, 1 week earlier. And again, right now it's 3 months prior to election date, so it would be 3 months and 1 week. The third one is ballot titles that are published in the newspapers. And right now, it's 15 days prior to the election. And this measure wants it to be moved up 30 days. So it would be 45 days prior to the election that ballot titles would be noticed, if you will, in newspapers. Okay. So a no vote means that everything that is currently in place stays in place. And a yes vote means that these things would move up. All right, questions on this one?
Let's see. Let's see. There was still another question on the taking the marriage definition out.
Sure.
To clarify, this is just to confirm, to clarify, language is not needed because the language in the federal constitution is in support of unions without specificity to one man and one woman. That
that
is the law. Yeah.
That is the law. That's the federal law.
And then a question on K. Oops. Yeah, is the current system broken?
I think the answer might be more along the lines of that there needs to be a little more time to do some of the things that need to be done, along with the notion that publishing ballot titles ought to be moved up 45 days so that more voters know more about what's coming. Now that's my sense of it. I don't think it's about fixing a broken system. I think those that are proposing it are proposing to enhance it in this way.
And then there's another question about K. Why does the legislature feel that this move is necessary? I think they talk mostly about the really, they need more time, as you say, to publish.
Yeah, I think it's made up.
I can jump in on this one.
Sure.
Because our Colorado Legislative Action Committee studied this proposal, and it was basically requested by the county clerks because they were having very, very tight deadlines between when they received the information, getting their ballots arranged to where they would fit and all that kind of thing, and then having to send them to the overseas voters, and very tight deadlines. And so they requested that these items be moved further apart so that they have more time now.
Okay.
Peggy, I think we're on to 79.
All right, Deborah, are there any more questions on that one?
No, no more.
Okay, all right, so Amendment 79, constitutional right to abortion. And this one was put on the ballot by a citizen initiative. Since it's a amendment, it requires 55%. And it basically does two things. It places the right of abortion into the Constitution, and it repeals a ban on funding out of the Constitution. So in 2022, the Supreme Court issued the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, which was the right to abortion. So then the next year, in 2023, the Colorado legislature passed a law creating the right to abortion in the state statutes. So now this amendment would now put it into the Constitution. Then as far as the funding, in 1984, so 40 years ago, voters narrowly passed a constitutional ban on funding for abortion for Medicaid recipients and for health insurance plans offered to state and local government workers. And that included thousands of teachers, firemen, police officers, various government workers on the various levels. So this amendment would repeal that ban on the funding, but it does not guarantee the funding. So all it does is just takes it out of the Constitution, and then it's up to the legislature and or the local governments to decide what they want their health insurance plans to cover for their employees. So pros, abortion access would be protected in Colorado regardless of changing political climates. And another pro, Colorado's Constitution should not ban funding for healthcare services. Rather, policymakers should have the option to fund the care that they believe residents need. And then con, it limits the ability of lawmakers to pass policies such as preventing late-term abortions. And another con, taxpayers should not be forced to pay for services to which they morally object. All right, any questions on that?
Nothing on 79.
Okay. Then we'll move to Amendment 80. So that is a constitutional right to school choice. And this is another citizen initiative. And since it's an amendment, it requires 55% to pass. So this creates a constitutional right to school choice. And this is related to K through 12 education. Under Colorado law, currently, students may attend any public school for free, even if they do not live in the school district. State law also permits parents to choose non-public schools, such as private schools or homeschools, but there is no funding for that. So this amendment results in no immediate change to state law, but it may affect how the legislature makes policies about choice and funding via court interpretation. So there's some concern that that if this goes into the Constitution, that there may be some kind of a assumption that all schools should be covered by public funding. So the pro is that the constitutional amendment ensures the right of school choice cannot be taken away by future legislatures. And the con is the measure may conflict with current law prohibiting public funding for private education and requiring interpretation by the courts. So are there questions on this amendment?
Yes. Will this amendment enable people to take legal action against the government using the amendment language as a basis to promote school choice?
Well, I mean, certainly people can take legal action. You know, this doesn't necessarily guarantee that or anything. It's, you know, you can always take legal action on anything that you think is legal or illegal.
Yeah, we already have school choice. Then there's a question, I'm not sure whether it's for 79 or 80. Does the amendment open up an issue for funding that could become an issue to voters?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if it's on 80, the school choice one, that is a concern. That it could be that it would be interpreted that that school choice and therefore funding is applicable for all kinds of schools.
Private is
It doesn't
private.
say that. It doesn't say that. It's just there are a lot of people that are afraid that it's going to open this up, kind of creating a constitutional right that might keep getting challenged. You know, the funding choices might keep getting challenged.
Because we do have choice already.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if there was a question on 79, we're happy to come back to it. In fact, we can come back to any question, any previous discussion.
All right, shall we go to JJ? So this is a proposition, and that means that it only requires a majority vote to pass sports betting tax revenue. So the legislature is proposing that additional sports betting tax revenue, that is that which is above and beyond which was initially approved that the overage be retained by the state and that it go for water projects. Now, a yes vote means that it, in fact, would support water projects around the state. And a no vote means that the overage, the additional taxes collected, would go back to the casinos and sports betting organizations. So that the state would have to give that money back to them. So a pro on this one, and it is an organization, yes on JJ. It simply seeking funding for more water projects. And there is no, that I have researched, there is no known opposition. I would imagine that the casinos and the sports betting organizations would prefer to receive the overage. So questions on JJ, this is change in the tax code. And if not, I'll go on to KK, which is another change in the tax code.
Nothing on JJ, but Peggy, we have a question on 80.
Okay, let's go back to it.
Does it mean the public schools get less funding?
So the amendment itself doesn't mean that, but if there are challenges to funding because of this amendment, and if funding needs to happen for private schools as well as public, then yes, that would reduce the amount of funding available for public schools.
And there's a question for 79. Does 79 open up an issue for funding that could become an issue to voters?
Okay, so 79 is taking the ban on funding for Medicaid recipients and government workers. It's taking that out of the Constitution. But it does not fund those particular buckets. So that would be up to the legislature or the various governments if they want to provide funding for abortion in their healthcare plans or for Medicaid recipients.
Okay, onward.
All right. So we are to Proposition KK. This is about firearms and ammunition and firearms parts. And it is referred by the state legislature, so it needs majority vote to pass. It creates a new excise tax, 6.5% excise tax to be paid by the dealers and manufacturers and vendors of firearms and ammunition. And the state proposes to use these funds for crime victim services, mental health services for military and youth, and school safety programs. It is thought that gun dealers would likely add the cost onto the products. And the other point about this is that federal funding for crime safety services is declining. For some time, the state has been using COVID funding, and that's drying up. So the one thought is that, and this the organization behind this is Colorado Supports Crime Victim Services, and the con organization is Stop Tax Increases. Okay. So one of the things about this one is that there is a concern that those wishing to purchase firearms and ammunition will go outside of the state to do that, where they might be able to purchase these things for less. The questions on, I'll just stop with that one. The questions on this one. All right. if we don't see any, then let's go on
No, just a second, just a second. There is one.
sure.
Who would collect to decide about and utilize the new tax? That's come up a lot, hasn't it?
The state would collect it and they would use it for these three, if we're talking about KK, they would use it for 3 areas. Victim services, mental health for youth and military folks, and safety in schools. So that is how specifically the tax would be used for KK.
So there's no.
And if we're talking JJ, the
Mm.
tax would be for water projects. So
Yeah.
those are the uses for each of those.
So with KK, it's up to the legislature.
All right, are there any more questions on those? If not, we'll move on to Proposition 127. And that is prohibit bobcat, lynx, and mountain lion hunting. And lynx hunting is already illegal at both the state and federal level. Bobcat and mountain lion hunting are currently managed by the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. And mountain lions are currently classified as big game. And landowners are eligible for state reimbursement if mountain lions cause damage. So this proposition would actually eliminate that eligibility for the state reimbursement. Okay, so pro, hunting causes the animals pain and trauma. These populations can naturally regulate themselves without the need for hunting. And a con, restricts the ability of wildlife experts at CPW to make science-based decisions to achieve the state's ecological objectives. Are there any questions on that one?
Not yet.
Okay. All right, let's move on to Proposition 128. Parole eligibility for crimes of violence. So this increases time served to at least 85% of their sentence in prison before becoming eligible for parole or reductions. Currently, it is 75% minus earned time so I'll just say that parole is a system of community supervision of persons related from prison, involving conditions of employment, housing, or substance abuse. And earned time, or referred to on this slide as reductions, that occurs while in prison as an incentive for progress toward personal, professional, or educational goals. And this can reduce time served by up to 10 or 12 days per month, depending on the type of reduction that's going on. Currently, an estimated 220 persons per year are convicted of violent crimes, and they're serving an average of 23 years. So a pro is that it increases public safety and ensures that justice is served. A con is that it removes the opportunity for inmates to achieve earned time and less incentive to follow prison rules or rehabilitate themselves. Are there questions on this one?
No, there's a question on 127. Is CPW formally against 127?
I don't know that for sure, but I'm kind of guessing that they wouldn't be able to weigh in on it.
That's
Being a
right.
government entity, they probably are not allowed to take positions, but I don't know that for sure.
I have personally read that they haven't done an endorsement or nor.
Okay,
opposed to it.
All right, thank you.
So that's, and there's nothing else on that or, yeah, or 128.
All right. Well, now we'll move to Proposition 129, which is to establish a veterinary professional associate. This is a citizen initiative. It is the product of animal welfare organizations. It passes with a majority vote. It establishes a new master's degree program in veterinary care. So graduates would be able to perform most veterinary functions, including most surgeries. So this is kind of an interesting one. If you think back to a number of years ago, there was a physician assistant program established. And either just before or just after that, the same kind of thinking went into the establishment of a nurse practitioner type program. And so now we're looking at this with veterinary professional associates. So those in favor want this because, citing a shortage of vet care and a shortage of affordable vet care. So those that are opposed to it, primarily veterinarians, there is an organization called All Pets Deserve Vet Care, are citing concerns about the level of training and how that this type of position would diminish the quality of pet care. I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing about the con organization. It's called Keep Our Pets Safe, okay? And the pro organization is All Pets Deserve Vet Care. All right, so I really want to clarify that mistake. All right, so any questions about professional veterinary associates?
I don't see any.
All right. And the next one, Proposition 130. And if you have questions, we'll get back to them. This is funding for law enforcement. It's a citizen initiative, passes with majority vote. This proposition proposes to create a new fund of $350 million for a number of things regarding police: hiring, recruiting and hiring, training, increasing salaries, and a $1 million death benefit for families. And it's a one-time for a one-time death benefit of $1 million for families of officers who are killed in the line of duty. This does require that the funding come from the existing state budget. This is not a new tax. So those in favor say that while local departments mostly offer survivor benefits, that these benefits are not all equal. Also citing the hardship in recruiting and retaining officers. And those opposed say that the state would have to cut funding from other programs in order to pay for this new initiative. Questions on 130?
No questions on 130.
Peggy?
All right, Proposition 131, possibly the most difficult one to understand on this year's ballot. It establishes an all-candidate primary and ranked choice voting in the general election. So primaries are the elections that are in June, and those have normally been just the Republicans and the Democrats have their primaries. This would include unaffiliated candidates, minor party candidates, etc. Everybody would be on the June primary ballot, and everybody can vote on that ballot. And then in the general election, it would be a ranked choice voting. I forgot to mention during the primary, the top 4 win. And then in the general election, it's only 4 candidates and there's ranked choice voting for that. So this applies to races for US Senator, US Representative, the Governor and Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State, State Treasurer, State Attorney General, State Board of Education, Regents of University of Colorado, and state senators and state representatives in the state legislature. So basically, most of our federal offices and most of our state offices. Does not apply to US president, district attorneys, or county and municipal offices. So under current law, this can't take effect until at least 12 municipalities of varying sizes have tried out ranked choice voting and pass a state audit. And if this initiative is passed, then the legislature might readdress that particular law and try to go with the will of the people. And so then that they would try to get it implemented by about 2028. So under this proposition, political parties can still pick candidates for the all-candidate primary through the assembly process. And then candidates can also get on the ballot with petitions. So really none of that changes other than the fact that unaffiliated and minor party candidates will now compete in the all-candidate primary in June instead of in the general election. And then party designations on both the primary ballot and the general election ballot. Party designations, including unaffiliated, will appear next to the candidate names. And voters will still receive ballots under the current system in the primary for district attorney and county offices. Well, in fact, in the general, they'll still just vote for one candidate instead of ranked choice. So in the June primary, voters will receive the all-candidate ballot, the Republican ballot or Democratic ballot, or both if they're unaffiliated. And then in the general, that would all be on the same ballot, but some would be by ranked choice and some would be by normal voting. Let's see here. All right, so a pro is that all candidate primary gives all voters equal opportunity to decide who will be on the November ballot. Oh yeah, I forgot to cover this, the ranked choice voting. This is what your ballot would look like. And so you could have more than one person from the same party on the ballot, like this has 2 people from party 2. And you rank your top person, your second person, and your third person. And then the way that it gets tabulated is that they count everybody's first choice first. And if there's a winner, then they don't need to go any further. But if nobody has gotten a majority, then they eliminate the lowest candidate. So let's just say that that was candidate D. All right, now if you happen to have voted for D as your first choice, then your second choice would go to your second choice candidate. And they keep rerunning it until they get somebody that's gotten the most votes. I know I didn't explain that very well. All right, so let's go on to pros and cons. A pro is, I started to say it, an all candidate primary gives all voters equal opportunity to decide who will be on the November ballot. And another pro is that the ranking in the general election allows voters more choice to express their voting preferences. And a con is new election system is complex and expensive, and voters will have to vote in 2 different systems and receive multiple ballots. Another con is that political parties play an important role in our system and should have their own primary elections to select candidates who reflect their beliefs. All right, now I wouldn't be surprised at all if there are questions on this.
Well, not yet. Maybe everybody's speechless.
Okay.
I should correct my, on the definition of marriage, it's not a federal law. I looked it up. It's in the Constitution, US Constitution, 14th Amendment, due process and equal protection clauses. And the landmark Supreme Court case was just as recently as 2015. Obergefell, you probably hear a lot about Obergefell versus Hodges. And the Supreme Court ruled that same-sex couples have the same right to marry as opposite-sex couples. But let's see, now we have, there's still no questions on 131.
Okay, well, I hope people understand it. And we can move on to the RTD question if you're thinking of any other questions here. So RTD has put a ballot measure on which all of us will be voting on. And that is ballot measure 7A. And that was referred by the RTD board and just requires a majority vote. So in 1999, voters exempted RTD from Tabor, which means, well, I'll just see if anybody has questions about Tabor. But it exempted RTD from Tabor requirements through the period required to pay bond debt for certain light rail lines. That debt will expire in 2024. So now RTD is asking for permission to keep that revenue from taxes, well, all their revenue from taxes, fares, and grants. And they won't be raising any taxes or any rates, but they'll just be keeping all of the money that they're currently receiving. They just don't need to pay a part of it toward those bonds anymore. So a pro is that it will allow RTD to keep and expand mass transit options, plus maintain current levels of bus and rail services. And a con is ridership is way down and the current level of spending is no longer needed. All right, are there any questions on that?
It'd probably be good to move on too, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's no questions, yeah.
all right, so I'll pass it on to Deborah.
Okay, Lafayette just has one question this year about collective bargaining for the city's commissioned police officers. The police petitioned the city council to institute collective bargaining, and the council referred the question to the voters. In Lafayette, the firefighters union has had collective bargaining since 2015, when voters approved a similar proposal. And this proposal for the police officers is modeled on the firefighters agreement. 2A requires the city council to enact a collective bargaining ordinance by next April of 2025. Negotiations would include conditions of employment, such as wages, hours, and fringe benefits. 2A also provides for non-binding arbitration in case of an impasse. If arbitration is required, the proposed resolution of the impasse would be submitted to the voters at a special election. I should mention that with the firefighters, they haven't ever had to go to non-binding arbitration, so. We haven't found any arguments against this proposal. The argument in favor of 2A is that the police officers themselves have requested collective bargaining, and the city is following the apparently successful process it used for collective bargaining for firefighters. So, any questions on that?
I don't see
There
any
are.
popped up.
So we have two questions from this entity, the Lafayette Downtown Development Authority, which doesn't exist yet. But question is, 6A is, should we organize one? And 6B is, how should we fund it? So the only people who vote on this are voters with residences or businesses in the present Lafayette Urban Renewal Authority. Both of these, question 6A and issue 6B, are from the City Council. The Downtown Development Authority, DDA in English, would replace the Urban Renewal Authority, which expires later this year. And the qualifications for a DDA are all spelled out in great detail in the state law. Both 6A and 6B would have to pass to form the DDA. If the question 6A passes, the mayor appoints a 7-member board, and his choices have to be confirmed by City Council. And as I said, everything about the DDAs, including board requirements, is spelled out in Colorado law. So 6B asks, do you authorize the DDA to collect, retain, and expend all revenues collected by the DDA and by the city on its behalf? The DDA will be funded in the same way as the Urban Renewal Authority, and that's by tax increment financing. The increment or increase in tax revenue that results from development is invested in further development, that is, renewing and remodeling and replacing structures increases commerce and thus increases sales tax revenue. And that increase, the increment in revenue, is dedicated to future development. 6B does not increase any local tax. It does not impose any new taxes. The Urban Renewal Authority is very limited. It's kind of public road, and then a little strip along the Lafayette side of Baseline. We haven't found arguments for or against 6A and 6B. So, any questions on the Downtown Development Authority? If not, we'll go on to Sharon Gable. She'll talk about the town of Superior.
Thanks, Deborah. Town of Superior ballot issue 3B proposes a sales tax increase and also to increase the town's debt by borrowing money through a bond issue. And that would be to fund capital improvement projects that are focused on construction, improvements, and repairs to pools, parks, and playgrounds. And some of the projects also involve street and roadway repairs, improvements, and construction. So the proposal is to increase the town of Superior sales tax by 0.315%. That translates to an added 31.5 cents for every $100 spent. The town estimates that the proposed sales tax increase would cost the average household in the town of Superior about $65 per year in additional cost. So regarding the bond that would pay for the projects, the bond would be for a maximum of $20 million. The town estimates that the sales tax increase will generate about $1.6 million per year of additional revenue that would be used to repay the debt. So if the ballot measure is passed, the sales tax increase would take effect on January 1st, 2025. And it'll expire no later than December 31st in 2050. So for a little background, the Town of Superior Board of Trustees began discussing the need for additional funding for these capital improvement projects and a possible sales tax increase to fund them back in early 2024. There was a Town of Superior Board of Trustees meeting on March 11th where it was pretty extensively discussed. And on August 12th, the Board of Trustees voted unanimously to put the to put the measure on the November 5th ballot. So a yes vote would approve the bond issuance and increase the Town of Superior sales tax by 0.315%. And that would bring the sales tax to 8.960% in Town of Superior. If the measure does not pass, the town's portion of the sales tax would remain the same. And the current sales tax rate of 8.645 would be maintained in Superior. The Town of Superior website has some rationale for the proposed sales tax increase, pointing out the funding is needed to repair aging infrastructure like pools, some of which are reaching their lifespan, as well as parks that in some cases need repairs or upgrading to modern standards. The town has also identified a number of street improvement projects that need funding. And issuing the bond would allow these projects to begin sooner rather than later when the cost of the projects would be higher. Further, it's noted that the sales tax is not just paid by the residents of the Town of Superior, but by anyone who shops or dines in the town. So it spreads the burden of the cost of repairing streets to more users of those streets, not just the town residents. So far, I haven't seen any organized outside support for or opposition to this proposed sales tax increase. So I'll see if there are any questions, and then I'll just say a few words about the Town of Superior home rule situation.
Yeah, there's no questions on the tax.
Okay. So what is not on the November 5th ballot is the question regarding adoption of the proposed home rule charter for the Town of Superior. So that question will be on the ballot in a special election in the Town of Superior. And that special election is scheduled for December 10th. So in that special election, the voters of Superior will be asked whether or not to approve the proposed home rule charter. If that is approved, then that would establish home rule in the Town of Superior. So I don't have a full presentation here on the home rule charter question, is because it's not on the November 5th ballot, but the Town of Superior Home Rule Commission has scheduled several informational sessions for residents who are interested in learning more about the home rule charter and about the special election on December 10th. So There's a session coming up on Tuesday, October 21st at 7 p.m. All these informational sessions about the Home Rule Charter, the Home Rule question, will be held at the Superior Community Center. So the first one's this Tuesday, October 21st. It begins at 7 p.m. And then there's a second informational session scheduled for Thursday, November 14th. That one starts at 5. And then there's a session on Monday, December 2nd at 7 p.m. So it's a lot of dates, so I'll go over them one more time. These are informational sessions where residents can ask questions about the proposed Home Rule Charter. They'll be held at the Superior Community Center on Tuesday, December 21st at 7 p.m., Thursday, November 14th at 5, and Monday, December 2nd at 7 p.m. And the special election on whether or not to approve the proposed Home Rule Charter in the town of Superior, that is going to be on Tuesday, December 10th. So if we don't have any questions, I'll turn it back to Stacy.
Sharon, this is Judy. Just one point. The first informational session in October, so the 21st is a Monday.
Oh, okay.
So maybe, would that be right, or would it
Yeah.
be Tuesday, the 22nd?
It's said the session was like, I can check it right.
Okay, why don't you just let us know?
Yeah, it is on October 21st. So if that's Monday, it's Monday.
That's great. That's fine. No problem.
Sorry.
Perfect.
Okay, to wrap it up, I'd like to thank our presenters for their dedicated work in supporting voters and their preparations for today's forum. A huge thank you also goes out to our 2024 Platinum level election sponsors, Premier Members Credit Union, and Wanna Brands. Please note, this presentation will be available on the League of Women Voters Boulder County website and the League's YouTube channel later this week, or in a couple days, most likely, and through Election Day. The presentation will also be available on the League's online voters guide, vote411.org, where voters can find information on candidates, candidate responses to questions curated by the League, and information on other ballot issues. We also encourage the public to visit lwvbc.org for more information on all other upcoming forum events. And finally, I would like to thank you, the viewer of this presentation. As a League member, I'd like to stress the importance that elections are our chance to stand up for what matters most to us and to have an impact on the issues that affect us, especially issues impacting our communities, our families, our loved ones, and our future. The League of Women Voters believes in empowering you, the voter, with straightforward information so your voice will be heard. Thank you all for attending this presentation this afternoon and being an informed voter. Again, thanks to all our presenters and the work of our interpreters.